On TV, Singing in the Rain appears to be cheerful. In the background, there was Torment. To meet Gene Kelly's demands, Donald O'Connor smoked 4 packs a day. He was yelled at by Kelly in front of everyone. Kelly granted O'Connor a day to heal after his shattered body finally fell apart. The studio physician cautioned against going on. Kelly was unconcerned. This was the unspoken negative aspect of America's favorite musical. On August 23, 1912, Gene Kelly was born in a rough, working-class Pittsburgh neighborhood. He came from an Irish-American family and was the middle kid out of 5. His mother Harriet stayed at home and reared the children, while his father James marketed phonographs and traveled frequently. She was a music lover, encouraged her kids to pursue careers in the performing arts. Gene's mother signed him and his brother up for dance lessons when he was 8 years old. He detested it. He was harassed by other boys who picked fights and called him derogatory names. After some time, Gene quit dancing and didn't start again until he was 15. But his mother persisted. She founded the 5 Kellys, a family-oriented performance company that gave performances at churches, hospitals, and other neighborhood gatherings. But in his heart, Gene felt stuck. It was sports, not dancing, that he enjoyed. Nevertheless, his entire style would subsequently be defined by this tension, this internal struggle between roughness and art. Gene was a star athlete by the time he got to high school. He participated in gymnastics, football, tennis, and track and field. He even had aspirations of joining the Pittsburgh Pirates as a shortstop. 3 years ahead of schedule, he graduated at 16, and was focused on athletics rather than entertainment. On the other hand, hockey was his favorite sport. To allow Gene to practice, his father would freeze the backyard. He began practicing with a semi-pro hockey team at the age of 15. People noticed something odd, though, when he began acting in school plays. On stage, he exuded sheer strength. He immediately won the admiration of girls who had previously disregarded him. Gene felt more confident after receiving that attention. He began to think that he might be more than just a sportsman. The 1929 crash followed. It was a severe Great Depression. His father was laid off. The funds had vanished. In order to support his family, Gene had to return home after dropping out of Penn State, where he had just begun studying journalism. He accepted every job that came his way: bricklayer, ditch digger, soda jerk, and yes, dancers. Everything changed at that point. Dancing has evolved from a pastime to a means of subsistence. He returned to school at the University of Pittsburgh, where he earned a degree in economics in 1933. He even attempted law school, but he knew deep down that it wasn't his calling. Despite the harshness of the Depression, it strengthened his work ethic. Gene began working around the clock, performing at night and instructing dance throughout the day. He started competing in talent shows all throughout Pittsburgh with his 13-year-old brother, Fred. They became inventive since they needed the award money. They began to improvise their own steps. They meticulously observed vaudeville dancers, imitated what they liked, and then improved upon it. They introduced athletic maneuvers that were forceful, sharp, and low to the earth. It was a muscular dance. Without even recognizing it, Gene and Fred were creating something new. The Gene Kelly Studio of Dance was established by the family in Squirrel Hill in 1932. At the age of 20, Gene took over as the primary teacher. He gave it everything he had. He had boundless vitality, according to the students. He inspired as much as he taught. Gene's vision was shaped by each hour he spent in that studio. Gene Kelly sought to alter people's perceptions of dance, not only dance. December 1940 was his big break. He played the lead in the Broadway musical Pal Joey at the age of 28. The role was neither pleasant nor safe. He portrayed a nightclub entertainer who took advantage of others to advance, but he managed to make it work. At the time, it was a great event that the play ran 374 times. People noticed something bold and new about him. Gene disregarded the laws of dance. "I create what the music and the drama demand," he told reporters. He stood out because of that approach. He was a machine at work. After a 16-hour day, his co-star Van Johnson once discovered him practicing by himself at midnight. There was only one light on, and Gene was still dancing beneath it. Hollywood took note. He secured a film contract with renowned producer David O. Selznick in October 1941. Gene, meanwhile, was not eager to go off Broadway. First, he would finish Pal Joey. He was that serious about the stage. However, it was evident that his adventure was going to move from the stage to the big screen. In 1942, he starred in his first movie. Unsure of what to do with him, Selznick sold MGM half of Gene's contract. The film was a World War I/II musical called For Me and My Gal. The star was Judy Garland. She particularly asked for Gene when she saw her friend Joey. However, Gene found the change difficult. Later on, he acknowledged that he detested his appearance on the big screen. It was terrible to see myself 20 times larger, he stated. Film required tighter, smaller motions. He wasn't used to the big Broadway style. His style was distinctive, nevertheless. Fred Astaire danced like silk while wearing tuxedos. Gene made dancing seem like a sport while sporting blue jeans. The crowds enjoyed his strength and attitude. It was a hit for me and my girlfriend. The remaining half of his contract was purchased by MGM. Gene Kelly demonstrated that masculine dancing didn't have to be delicate in a single film. It could be grounded, tough, and cool. His life was altered by that incident in 1942, and it also altered Hollywood's perception of dance. Gene began creating a completely new dance style. He didn't want it to seem distant or ostentatious. He desired for it to seem genuine. It was dubbed Dance for the Common Man by him. He combined modern dance, jazz, tap, ballet, and even the jitterbug. Although he had many influences, George M. Cohan stood out. I share Cohan's Irish energy, Gene added. Always cocky and full of fight, he is always on his toes. He felt that male dancing was strong, not weak, because of that kind of spirit. He was aware that not all boys desired to dance. He had experienced that himself while growing up in Pittsburgh. It was believed that dancing was reserved for girls or unmanly boys. That thought was shattered by Gene. He had athletic movements. He had a boxer's dance. His style, which declared that you didn't need tails to move with strength, had developed into its own language by the middle of the 1940s. Gene, however, desired control over performance. He danced with a mop in Thousands Cheer, 1943, his first attempt at choreography. Although it sounds absurd, it wasn't. It was innovative, intelligent, and successful. In 1944, he made his big breakthrough with CoverGirl. He was given independence by Columbia Pictures after being borrowed by MGM. He made something crazy with it. He danced with his own reflection in one scenario. No one had ever done it before. Gene was no longer only dancing. He was pushing the boundaries of what dance could achieve on camera by utilizing split screens, reflections, film gimmicks, and even animation. Steps were no longer the only thing involved. It was about using movement to communicate a tale. He was trusted enough by MGM by 1949 to co-direct On the Town. For the first time, he was actually guiding the ship rather than just staring. And everything altered as a result. He no longer choreographed exclusively for himself. He oversaw entire productions. He had a group, such as Alex Romero, Carol Haney, Stanley Donen, and Gene Coyne. They collaborated to create entire dance-based scenes. Not as a decorative dance, but include dance in the narrative. Movies shouldn't pause for a dance performance, according to Gene. Rather, the dance ought to further the plot. His mission was that idea. On the other hand, Donald O'Connor was born in Chicago, Illinois on August 28, 1925. He was St. Elizabeth Hospital's 200th baby. His parents were already heavily involved in entertainment. John Chuck O'Connor, his father, was an acrobat and strongman in the circus. Effie Irene, his mother, had been an accomplished bareback horseback rider. They collaborated as members of the O'Connor family, royal family of vaudeville, a vaudeville act. They were so busy traveling that they were unable to recall Donald's birthplace or exact date. He was on the show practically from the beginning. He was dancing on stage at the age of 13 months. They would hold him by the back of his neck, play music, and he would kick in time with the beat, even though he was still unable to walk. Later, he made a joke about how any infant could do that as long as he was paid. Donald was only the fourth kid in the family to live, although being the seventh son. Jack, Billy, and Arlene, his older siblings, also participated in the scheme. But it wasn't all fun and show business. Tragedy struck hard and early. Donald and his sister Arlene were attempting to cross the street outside a Hartford, Connecticut theater in 1927 when Donald was just 2 years old. A car quickly arrived. The 7-year-old Arlene was immediately slain. Donald made it out alive. Their father passed away from a heart attack while performing in Brockton, Massachusetts a few weeks later. 2 fatalities within a few weeks. Their mother was broken by it. From then on, she became fiercely protective of Donald. Until he was 13, she did not allow him to cross the street by himself. She watched him closely, particularly when he wasn't on stage. 3 other infants had previously died in their household. Donald's early years were influenced by both stage lights and sadness, because they had experienced so much suffering. However, the show had to continue. Unlike other children, Donald did not attend a conventional school. After taking correspondence classes, he enrolled in Hollywood Professional School to further his education. The stage, however, was his actual classroom. He was able to play instruments before he could read music, sing before he could speak coherently, and dance before he could stand. The O'Connor family act combined humor, dance, singing, and circus acts. Donald already had the timing and rhythm of an experienced performer by the time he was 4 years old. He claimed that he didn't truly begin singing until he was 2 years old, which felt like a late start to him. He was always on the go. One city after another, one show after another. He became a natural as a result of such constant training. Hollywood followed. When Donald was 11 years old in 1937, he and his siblings were given a small role in the Warner siblings movie Melody for Two. He performed a specialty dance. Although it wasn't a significant role, it was sufficient to garner attention. He was signed by Paramount a year later. They offered him $250 a week when he was 12. Today, that's roughly $5,000 a week. He was cast as the younger brother of Bing Crosby in the 1938 film Sing You Sinners. People recognized him because he was charming and skilled. He soon began appearing in larger motion pictures like Men with Wings and Beau Geste, 1939, co-starring with Gary Cooper. In Tom Sawyer Detective, he even portrayed Huck Finn. He was ready for more by 1941, but Paramount had given him a terrific start. He joined Universal Pictures at the age of 16. That was the pivotal moment. Universal has a strategy. MGM's teenage stars Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney filled theaters. In order to create their own version, Universal paired Donald with Peggy Ryan. Peggy, too, grew up in a vaudeville family. She had a natural knack for rhythm and was born in 1924. What's Cookin' 1942 was their first joint film. It came together. They were adored by audiences. In barely 2 years, they produced 7 musical comedies. Get Hep to Love Sisters, Private Buckaroo, Give Out, and Top Man are all bursting with passion, quick dances, frenzied facial expressions, and constant action. They were the ideal getaway throughout the war. 1943's Mr. Big was one of their biggest hits. Initially a low-budget B-film, Universal recognized its potential. To improve the musical scenes, they added an additional $50,000. Today, that amounts to almost $850,000. The update was successful. All of Donald's subsequent Universal productions were higher-budget A productions. He was no longer merely an adolescent idol. He had the makings of a leading man. Arthur Freed, a producer of MGM, had a bold idea in 1952. Using old songs he had written with Nacio Herb Brown in the 1920s and 1930s, he intended to create a musical. These songs date back to Hollywood's early years, when sound was replacing silent motion pictures. Thus, Betty Comden and Adolph Green, the film's authors, chose to situate the film in that era. They have nearly complete independence thanks to Freed. He only advised them to include as many of these songs as possible in their film. Director Stanley Donen, who had collaborated extensively with Gene Kelly, was called in by Freed. Kelly was the natural option to play Don Lockwood, the main role, as he became a song and dance man. In order to save Donald O'Connor from the ridiculous Francis the Talking Mule movies he was shooting at Universal, Donen campaigned hard for him to play Cosmo Brown. Debbie Reynolds, who is 19 years old, was cast as Kathy Selden. She was full of energy, charm, and a lovely voice, but she had never taken dance classes. The film wasn't inexpensive, making it cost $2,540, $800, which was $665,000 more than anticipated. $157,000 was spent on the costumes alone, but it was worthwhile. It earned $7.7 million when it debuted in theaters in April 1952. That was a huge triumph. Gene Kelly was more than simply the movie's star. Along with Stanley Donen, he co-directed and choreographed it. He had a lot of power on set because of that. Kelly's daring, flowing dance routines in Cover Girl, released in 1944, had already revolutionized the music industry. He was now prepared to take on much more. Kelly concentrated on the dancing. Donen, on the other hand, was in charge of the musical and dramatic sequences behind the camera. However, they struggled as a team. Later on, Donen made a joke about how co-direct actually meant fight. By the end, they were scarcely able to cooperate because of how tense things had become. Kelly was meticulous. Everyone was pushed by him, but Debbie Reynolds most of all. He frequently made her weep, she subsequently claimed. Additionally, Kelly would use Donald O'Connor as a target for his resentment when she became too agitated. O'Connor, Donald, faced his own challenges. He was raised in a vaudeville household and began performing with them at the age of 13 months. He learned to dance on stage, not in a studio, in this way. O'Connor had to learn things the hard way, in contrast to Kelly, who had years of official ballet training. He felt like he was always catching up since he had trouble remembering dancing moves. I had never had any formal training, he acknowledged. Routines were hard for me to learn. I had to start learning how to dance seriously when I was 15. He also noted a significant change in style. He and other vaudeville dancers danced from the waist down. The entire body had to move to the music in the movies. He had to develop into what he referred to as a complete dancer. He had amazing athletic ability. Rehearsals were tough, but few could equal him. Attempting to match Kelly's precise approach just made matters more difficult. Unaware that it would turn out to be the worst day of his career, Donald O'Connor entered MGM's Stage 15 on April 18, 1951. He was instructed by Gene Kelly to film the entire Make 'em Laugh act in a single day. Hours of continuous dancing, stunts and falls on exposed concrete were part of that. There was no cushioning or shock absorption, just pain, and the floor was extremely solid. While filming, O'Connor smoked 4 packs a day. His physique was already under stress at the age of 26. And this one wasn't even choreographed by Gene Kelly. He simply threw O'Connor into a prop-filled room while 2 assistants looked on. They documented every amusing gesture they observed. O'Connor lacked acrobatic training. He was able to balance his hands. This routine was made considerably more difficult by it. He often had to push himself outside his comfort zone. Because O'Connor persisted in trying to please the perfectionist who wouldn't let him quit. And Kelly insisted on more takes. Backflipping off the wall was one of the most difficult tricks. It still ached even after receiving retraining from his own brother Jack, one of the world's top acrobats, and a special angled wall. It hurts for everyone. He had numerous bruises on his feet. The team only provided him with tiny mats to cushion his aching ankles. He pleaded for assistance. They decorated him. He continued to fall to the ground. 13 distinct pitfalls. He once claimed that the way the number was going, it felt like he would have to end his own life to finish it. The darkness deepened behind the scenes. Every time something went wrong, Kelly vehemently accused O'Connor. O'Connor received the brunt of the criticism, even while Kelly was at fault. He was humiliated in front of the crew by Kelly. O'Connor served as his punching bag. Being aware that he couldn't vent his rage on Debbie Reynolds, who was 19 years old, O'Connor took it all in. The strain to be flawless, the mental torment, and the physical suffering. The shoot came to an end at last. He went home on May 1st and passed out. He was immobile for 3 days. His entire body let out a scream. He went back to the studio on May 5th. As nonchalant as ever, Gene Kelly approached him and remarked, "Do you think you could do that number again?" O'Connor believed it to be a joke. "Yes," he said. "At any moment." It wasn't a joke. The cameraman had made a mistake. They had set the camera's aperture incorrectly. All of the frames were overexposed. Not even O'Connor's suffering had been captured on camera. Before the reshoot, Gene Kelly gave him a day to recuperate. The second shot started on May 7. The studio physician cautioned against doing so. He had injured muscles. His physique wasn't prepared. However, delays were costing MGM $37,000 every day. Kelly refused to wait. Instead, they buttered him up. Gifts were brought by the cast and crew. He was informed that the dance was the best ever captured on camera. When Louis B. Mayer called, he promised a bonus of $5,000. O'Connor concurred. During the takes, he hobbled. In between shots, he applied ice packs. Somehow, he managed to avoid getting the worst bruises. It was even better than the previous time, according to some. He was sent to the hospital right away on May 8. Reports differ. He reportedly stayed at St. John's for 3 days. A week in Cedars of Lebanon, according to others. In any case, he was dehydrated, had 2 shattered ribs, ripped muscles, and was completely ruined. He had bruises on 40% of his body. He permanently lost 15% of his knee's flexibility. Nevertheless, he made a joke about it in a subsequent interview. He grinned. "The second take was better," he remarked. Debbie Reynolds, only 19 years old, scored the most important job of her life in 1951. She was chosen for the huge MGM musical Singin' in the Rain. Her 39-year-old co-star Gene Kelly, however, didn't want her. She lacked extensive dance instruction, was young, and lacked experience. The first time they met, Kelly, a professional ballet dancer, expressed his rage. "What have you done before?" he questioned icily, glancing up and down at her. Debbie needed to prepare for 3 months. Professionals like Donald O'Connor, who had been dancing on camera since he was 12, were all around her. Debbie was drowning, not simply falling behind. She worked with 3 dance instructors for 8 hours every day. It was cruel. She hurled her tap shoes against a mirror and broke it one day because she was so angry. It wasn't made any simpler by Gene Kelly. "Smile more," he said at her, despite the pain on her face. "My cheeks felt like they were about to burst." And she later said that Gene would yell at me if I wasn't smiling. She once sobbed while hiding beneath a piano because it got that horrible. Fred Astaire discovered her there. Astaire had just entered his 50s. He was extremely discreet about his rehearsals and a legend. However, he did something unprecedented when he noticed Debbie crying. He asked her to come practice with him. She kept watching him dance until his face flushed. Then he informed her that even the greatest people struggle to be truly great, but you must never give up. Though not every moment was as wonderful, that one gave her the strength to press on. Kelly went too far in a kiss scene. It evolved from what should have been a brief, fleeting cinematic kiss. He took hold of her and pushed his tongue down her throat, according to what Debbie later recalled in her memoir. She let out a scream, rushed around the set pleading for a Coca-Cola to wash her mouth after pulling away. She was just 19. Kelly was 39 years old. Not even a French kiss had ever been given to her. She was abused and humiliated. Kelly was even more cruel than that. Despite its happy appearance, the well-known Good Morning Dancing scene was actually torture. At 8 a.m. they began shooting. They continued till 11 p.m. 15 hours of dancing non-stop. Debbie's feet were bleeding through her shoes by the end. He simply remarked, "Clean it up," when she showed them to Kelly. She was unable to leave the set. She was brought to her dressing room by assistants. The doctors prescribed bed rest for 2 days. Kelly ultimately made use of the initial take. Debbie never forgot how difficult it was, but she persisted. She claimed that Kelly constantly criticized her without ever offering any encouragement. In between takes, she sobbed. Kelly said that she wasn't particularly kind to Debbie years later. His widow attempted to justify him by claiming that he was merely attempting to make her look her best, which astonished me because she still talks to me. Later in life, Debbie said that he had to be harsh with me. I couldn't have learned that much so quickly without it. Nevertheless, she recalled crying much of the time. However, the pressure shattered more than just Debbie. Kelly's other co-star, Donald O'Connor, also suffered greatly. He was accustomed to performing non-stop after being enlisted during World War II at the age of 18. He continued at that rate. The physical agony and stress increased after Singing in the Rain. He used alcohol as a coping mechanism. Then, in the 1970s, he took a risky move. He began taking nitroglycerin pills before shows to maintain his energy levels. These were heart-related medications. He simply needed to feel youthful again. He wasn't ill. It worked for a time. But everything fell apart on August 17, 1971. A heart attack struck him. O'Connor stopped taking the medicines, but he ignored the underlying problem. His career stagnated as his drinking worsened. In the end, he did TV guest spots rather than movie leads. He battled addiction while portraying a drug addict on Police Story. He went on to say, "I'd have 1 or 2 bottles instead of coming home and having 1 or 2 drinks." His marriage was ruined. In 1978, he lost his wife, Gloria. He passed out from alcohol poisoning the same year. He was paralyzed from the waist down, according to the doctors. He was unable to dance. He was unable to stand. At last, his body had surrendered. O'Connor didn't take rehabilitation seriously at first. Before, he had always pretended to be sincere, but this time something was different. He spent 3 months in the hospital. He described the patients surrounding him in letters to his daughter during that time. One was a man in his 30s who was completely immobile. A 13-year-old junkie was another. He wrote, "I hope you can forgive me," in one letter. And this time, recuperation stalled. He regained his ability to walk after arduous physical therapy. He remained sober as well. His relatives referred to it as a miracle. According to his wife Gloria, sobriety was a gift from God. Fred, his son, concurred, stating that a greater power had cured him. In 1979, O'Connor returned to the stage. It wasn't flawless. Even though he had to stop mid-song during his first performance due to a technical glitch, the audience nevertheless applauded him. He continued. He received an Emmy nomination in 1980 for his Oscar dance homage. He danced as he used to, but without the medications, while riding a camera crane. Until his passing in 2003, Donald O'Connor maintained his sobriety. For the final 25 years of his life, he performed, cleaned, and was thankful. His narrative did not end with his collapse. It was spared.